Welcome to this evening's regular meeting of the Board of Trustees. We want to note that this meeting is being broadcast on the NUSD YouTube channel at the direction of the board. The broadcast may capture images and sounds from those attending the meeting. If you would like to make public comment on any item on the agenda or not on agenda, please see staff at the side table for a comment card. Please join us in the Pledge of Allegiance. The board met in closed session, and we will hear a report from Trustee Novato.
Good evening. The board met in closed session on the following items: conference with legal counsel, settlement of pending litigation. On September 10, 2024, a majority of the board in closed session voted to approve a settlement agreement with the parent guardian of student reference number 2024-25-2003, who asserted special education claims against the district. The board approved reimbursement for services in exchange for releases and waiver of claim against the district.
Trustee Millerick made a motion to approve the settlement agreement stated above. Trustee Butler seconded the motion. We will now have a roll call vote. Trustee Butler.
Aye.
Trustee Gasson.
Aye.
Trustee Jacobson, aye. Trustee Novato.
Aye.
Trustee Mack.
Aye.
Trustee Millerick.
Aye.
Trustee Pickus.
Aye.
Thank you.
Public employee discipline dismissal release. Information only. Thank you.
I now ask for approval of this evening's agenda. I saw a hand from Trustee Gasson and a second from Trustee Mack. Thank you. All those in favor?
Aye.
7, none opposed. Thank you. And we also now need approval of tonight's consent agenda. Are there any items that anyone would like to pull? Trustee Millerick.
I would like to pull item 14L and for discussion immediately after.
14L, thank you. Any other items? Trustee Gasson?
14G and M.
14G and 14M. Okay, and would you like those discussed immediately or later in the night?
We can do G immediately and M if you want to wait till the end.
Okay.
It's up to you.
Okay, any other items? All right, might I please have a motion to approve the consent agenda without 14L, G, and M included? Trustee Millerick, thank you. And a second by Trustee Gasson. Okay, all those in favor? 7, none opposed, thank you. Let's please go to item 14L.
So item 14L is excess liability insurance to cover cyber liability risk. The policy the policy we're under covers the whole county. This is explicitly for us, I believe. Could you provide us any additional information?
Absolutely. As part of our general liability insurance with Keenan, we have a shared pool for cyber liability, which means all of the region that shares into that pool, which is most of Marin County, some of Sonoma, some of all the local counties, share into that one amount. So if we were ever to have a really massive cyber attack that hit all school districts in the area or the county area, we would all have a proportional piece of that, which means that it could maybe not cover our actual damages. The excess cyber liability basically gives us our own cyber liability insurance. So we are still pooled because that's how insurance works, but now we have a per amount claim that is just for ours, or just for us, and just for our damages.
I understand you collaborated with our IT director on this proposal.
Absolutely.
Good. Okay. With that, our IT director has done a great job of increasing the security and reliability of our networks, making physical changes. This is the similar fiscal side of that same equation, same issue, protecting the district, and I would like to approve this item.
So that's a first by Trustee Millerick and a second by Trustee Pickus. Any conversation? Okay, all those in favor? 7, none opposed.
Thank
Thank you. Let's
Thank you.
go to item G, approval of the 24-25 Career Technical Education Advisory Committee. Trustee Gaston, would you like to speak to that?
Yeah, no, I just wanted to bring it to the forefront. I think this is a really great thing that we're doing. There's a lot of conversations, particularly in my world, because my daughter is a senior and my other daughter is a sophomore, about the opportunities for our kids in school. So I just wanted to say, in consent, it doesn't get highlighted as much as I would like it to be. So thank you to everyone that's going to be on it, and I look forward to hearing more later. So I would like to move that we approve the 2024-25 Career Technical Education Advisory Committee as presented.
Great, and I see a second by Trustee Millerick, and we'll make sure that we hear from that committee at some point in the year. Any other discussion? All those in favor? 7, none opposed. And last, we will now discuss item 14M, approval of the NV5 task order proposal for solar assessment management services.
Thank you. And actually, I did get some information, so I better understand what's being presented. I think pulling it was just wanted to request, if possible. I know that I wasn't on the board at the time that we installed solar. I think I was just a little bit before me, and there might be an opportunity, since one of these pieces looks like the target date is November to be completed, if maybe there would be a good chance to add to the agenda kind of an overview of the solar panels. Like, I didn't know that we don't actually own them, so that would be something that is new to me. So just would like to request, if that seemed like a logical point in time, that we could maybe bring it forward with the outcome of whatever the report is, and an overview of exactly what we've got currently. So.
Yes, and just to clarify as well, we had this proposal for a little bit, and we were trying to make sure that we worked it into our budget and everything like that. So it will push the timeline out a little bit. They were originally going to be starting in like August, so maybe an extra month on there. But absolutely, I would
Okay.
expect to share that the findings of that with the trustees.
Okay, and it was helpful to understand that there's 2 phases, because I saw the following one wasn't for like over a year away. So thank you for clarifying the breakup on that. So I'm good with it. Unless somebody else had any questions, I would move to approve the proposal for solar asset management services.
Thank you, Trustee Gaston. With a first, do we have a second? Trustee Pickus, thank you. Conversation, okay. All those in favor? 7 in favor, none opposed. Wonderful. Thank you so much. We now will go to announcements from the board and superintendent.
No announcement, well, let me see. Yeah, no announcements. I'm busy outside of this district.
Good evening, everyone. I had the opportunity to visit Linwood's back to school night. It's where my children go, so that was an easy one. But it's always lovely, and wish I had an opportunity to go to more. It's just so nice to see the teachers, and they're so excited, and the families are so excited. And I know that that's happening at every site. So thanks for everyone putting in extra hours for all of those. We're also doing sort of as a board or independently, we're trying to get to more sites on a weekly basis. So I had the opportunity to go to Novato, which was lovely. So thank you so much to all the teachers. And Novato's here tonight for opening their classroom doors. It was really exciting to see what's happening in the classrooms.
I as well attended some back to school nights. I was able to get to San Jose, Lou Sutton, and Novato High. Every one of them well attended, which was really nice to see a lot of parents out and just getting to know the school that their children go to. So understand what goes on. I was able to do a site visit at Rancho as well. And then we had Northern Council PTA had their first meeting of the school year, which was a lot of nuts and bolts for new presidents, new PTA presidents, and returning presidents. So it was a good meeting.
Very much the same. I love going to the back to school nights, especially when there's little kids running around, and getting a chance to do site visits at Rancho and Novato High was also really fun. I too went to the Northern Council PTA, saw a lot of new leaders, and was super excited about the coming year. I attended the school fuel meeting, and there was a lot of information provided at the meeting. A couple of things to highlight would be they have their grant applications are open right now through September 30th, and you can find information via School Fuel's website. The softball tournament dates are set. I don't know if Trustee Jacobson might have more information, but the first match is October 7th and 8th. Then the 14th and 15th, and the championship is going to be on October 18th. I was also present for the transition to a new president. Heather Salmons is now the president of School Fuel. Kate McNear, who I've known since our kids were together in kindergarten, is when I met her. And so it's this whole weird transitional thing that we've got going on as our kids kind of graduate out of Novato schools, but very much appreciated all of her years of service as president. And then there's a couple meetings coming up this week. There is the Safe Routes meeting tomorrow night at 5 p.m. And I forgot to get the website, but if anyone's interested, that is tomorrow at 5. I think you can Google Safe Routes and find that. And then we're having the new Family Special Education Night on September 18th at 5:30 p.m.
Late last year, I've been a member of the North Coast Section Board of Managers for the last couple of years, and I was elected to the executive governing committee for North Coast Section, and went to my first meeting yesterday, and really interesting, a lot of high-level stuff going on there, and the conversation regarding middle school sports is now in play at the North Coast Section level, and they're going to start pushing it up to the state. There is some resistance, but there's also a whole lot of support. So stay tuned.
Good evening. I also attended open house at Linwood and San Jose Middle School. I always get excited to see our students, our parents engaged, our teachers. What I observed at San Jose, some of our monolingual parents were able to engage. Some of the teachers had their presentations in English and Spanish. So I love when our monolingual parents can engage with in the classroom. And tomorrow we have JLAC, I think at 8 o'clock in the morning. So I'm excited to hear what's going on in Sacramento. Thank you.
Much more of the same. Also, Employee Workforce Housing Communications Group. I hope everyone in the community got the amazing letter that went out that was about all things employee workforce housing. It was a great synopsis of what's been taking place. And the School Fuel Softball Tournament, just to add, is a fundraiser that School Fuel does. It's a great way to be a part of your school community. There should be signups on most of the school's parent squares, or you can reach out to your PTA presidents probably, and also on their website is a link to register. Thank you.
All right, busy start of the school year. The electrifying atmosphere at Friday Night Lights. Last 2 Fridays, we had Novato High 2 weeks ago, and then San Marin last week. We just thank all of our staff who are able to help support that, and North Bay Security and the Novato Police Department for their extra vigilance and presence. And then congratulations to all. Marin Oaks will be tomorrow. To all of our schools for their incredibly well attended and high and extra warm as in temperature back to school nights. The year has officially launched. I think when we think about back to school nights, we think, oh, the teachers are presenting, the parents are attending, and they really don't understand everything that goes into preparing for those nights. When I engage with staff, they're like, we got ready for this, and the office managers and maintenance operations, the custodians. So just a big, huge shout out to understanding what an achievement each of those back to school nights are. Got to see the classrooms in Rancho with a special shout out to our early intervention classes there as well. Once again, vibrant, respectful, engaged environment for our students. We appreciate our partnerships with NFT and CSEA, to our union partners. We have just agreed and signed an MOU with NFT, so Novato Federation for Teachers, to establish a social emotional learning block once a week in our middle schools. So we appreciate all of that support. The next exciting thing is next Wednesday, Monday and Tuesday, both at Lou Sutton and Linwood, we will have residency recruitment nights. So right now we have 6 teacher residents, 3 at Lou Sutton and 3 at Linwood. And they're doing fabulously, and so we need more for next year. And so please, whatever we can do to recruit new teachers into our workforce would be absolutely amazing. And then finally, I want to introduce, I'd like to invite up JC Van Ruin. He is yes, you have to be really awkward and just kind of stand up there. Okay. The Director of Maintenance and Operation, will be approved, or he was just approved on consent as our new director. He has already started his work. His official day, gosh, it's been like 6 days, 7 days? Day 5. So he joins us from the Miller Creek School District. He served as the assistant to the chief business official. He spearheaded the establishment of a digital-based solutions that significantly enhanced operational efficiency and effectiveness. Prior to his work in education, he had a celebrated career with Levi Strauss and Company. Is it co or company? And co. Okay, can see either way. Okay. I didn't want to offend anybody. Where he held multiple senior leadership roles, including Director of Product Operations and Digital Tools. We are just so excited to have you, JC. Welcome to our team. You're fitting in so well already. And that's all. We just had to get to take your picture and say welcome. Yeah. She always comes in close. I do. All right. Thank you, JC. Thanks for staying.
Okay, we now have a presentation from Novato High School. Thank you.
Let's not do the update. It was about to update the computer. That was going to be scary. Well, that's the one I have. No, I have this one.
Thanks, Ellen. We're doing great. We're standing perfectly. Good evening, board. So wonderful to see you all, and thank you for being here. We are Novato High School. And we're here to talk about algebra, but I learned somewhere years ago that you usually or should start any sort of presentation with a quick story. So I am new to Marin. I've only been here 15 years. And when I first came here, I went to my first MCAL meeting, and we were talking about all this stuff, wrestling and things. And I said, as principals, do we ever come together and talk about algebra? And they're like, no, we don't really do that. And I said, well, we should think about that. And it never really happened, but that's okay. 15 years later, I've landed at a school where we can say algebra, and I am very proud to report we step up and we step in and we take a look at what's hard, and we're willing to do the really, really good work. So I think I wanted to start with that. Not that nobody else cares about algebra, but to meet a team that has the courage to take a look at the data the way that we're going to look at data, and just keep jumping in and trying this and failing forward and failing backwards, and then having some really strong successes excites me. So with that, let's talk about our Algebra 1 project. We start by really taking a look at what is the problem, where are we sitting inside of it, and the reason I told the story at the beginning is because algebra and struggles within algebra are nothing new, and it's not like Novato High School is the only one that struggles with it. In fact, coming out of the Campbell School District, where I was one of 42 high schools in the San Jose area, Algebra was always number one on anything we talked about. What is, like I said, lovely and new in Novato is we recognize the problem. We're sitting below standards on math competency. Regardless of what indicator you want to look at, we want our students to be performing at a higher standard. We recognize that right now on our friend the CAS, which is our state testing, we're sitting somewhere over 70% that are below proficient in our math. So understanding that that is our problem of practice and understanding that our students are not strong and their lack of strength and mathematic competency doesn't just impact their ability to be successful in Algebra 1. Our more significant concern is when they hit really what's kind of the gatekeeper course, and that's not a Novato language. That is a statewide language about Algebra 2. That's the class. If we can't get kids through that class successfully, then one, they might not be eligible to be A to G and college eligible. But two, we also find that when they hit college, they don't necessarily have the same kind of strength as they would if they got through an Algebra 2 course. So Algebra 1 is essential. Quick look at data. We did have this whole slide deck in black, and it was really pretty. And unfortunately, we also had a white copy, and we sent you guys the white copy, and the black copy is a little nicer. So I apologize if it's not quite as bee-friendly. We had a lot more hornets flying around. So it's just some super quick data for y'all. This is currently looking at our CAS data from last year. Where'd the CAS data go? Wait a minute, rewind. It was in this one. So I actually want to talk about this super quick. I'm sorry, we rearranged some slides here. What I also want to mention to you is when we talk about our students are performing less than proficient on the CASP, many times we associate those, in this case, over 70%, as students that sit inside of categories that we say, oh yeah, well that makes sense. Like if they're new to the country or they're still learning mathematics skills. What's important is that we understand that of all three categories of English, of students as they come to us, of their language categories, so our English language learners, our RFEP, our recently redesignated students, and our EO, which is sometimes a new term for people, it's English only. All three groups are below standard, and all three groups declined over the last 2 years. Perfect music. Happy music for some really struggling statistics. So I don't want us to think, oh, well, this is really a problem and we really need to beef up our EL programs. Yes, we do. And it's universal across all groups of students. So last year's data, as we took a look, was an improvement over the year before, and Allie and team are going to get into that. But of just last year, thank you, Danny, for my data, 7.6% of all kids who took algebra failed. And 26% of those kids got either a D or an F. And we know a D is a whole nother board meeting in itself. But the D is the grade that we give a kid many times who shows some minimal competency and we feel comfortable passing, but it doesn't mean that they are going to go to the next level and be super successful. We just ran a quick survey about Access, and 60% of the kids reported on that survey that they use Access, our tutorial, for math support. I then ran around and talked to these beautiful people because I'm the data part, so then I'll shut up and then the fun talk starts. But of the data part, what I thought was interesting is Danny Kimber, who's was our data specialist and has now moved into EL role, but is still here tonight helping out. He dropped the quote at our opening staff meeting that 1 in 5 students at Novato High School are English language learners. Well, then my friend Tess Schoenthal, who you'll hear from in a second, dropped today. Well, 1 in 4 students are okay in mathematics. 1 in 4. Nope, backwards. 1 in 4 struggle in mathematics. So those were the numbers that really kind of sat with me when I'm looking at these here. 1 in 4. And then she also talked about this, which you're going to hear about, our new placement test, which we ran all the students through last week. We had 13 students out of 274 who scored 70% or higher on the placement. 13 out of 274. And so before I hand this over to my friend Allie here, what I really want us to understand is we in no way look for anyone to point fingers at. We don't look at our kids. We don't look at our families. We don't look at our middle schools. We are taking the kids as they're sitting in front of us, and we are going to collectively pull apart algebra and do the best that we can do to get these kids through our aspiration. And our aspiration is not only on top, do we have two of the cutest kids on the planet, right? Just pinch those little cheeks. And no, they're not dating. Yes, they are. And the picture under is Tess sitting in the middle of her classroom. That's right. She teaches 25 to 30 kids, and that's how she sets up her classroom. Tess sitting in the middle of her classroom working with kids in Algebra 1. Our aspiration and the way we're building our program is that all students will pass Algebra 1 their first time. We want to eliminate the concept of repeating algebra. And, Allie, part 2 of that.
One thing that we've noticed, because we've been doing this for 3 years now, this is the third iteration of what we've been trying different things in order to support our kids in algebra, is that algebra is a bellwether of things, and algebra in and of itself is often not the issue. The issue is self-regulation, it's academic skill set, it's the ability to have executive functioning skills. So what we're trying to do is approach this in a holistic way to look at the whole child. And also, kids who pass algebra, when it takes a kid to take 2 years to pass algebra, repeater algebra, they're 18% less likely to go to college. Kids who don't pass algebra in 9th grade are half as likely to graduate from high school. So it's not just about getting our kids to college, yes, but also every single one of our kids deserves, and we owe it to them, to have a skill set representative of a high school diploma. So it is our heartfelt hope that we get all these kids through in a holistic approach. So our first year, year 1, we came out of 21-22 school year and we had a 51% failure rate in Algebra 1.
Allie, I'm
So-
sorry to
oh, I'm
interrupt
sorry.
you, but I think you went 2 slides. Would you go back one so that we can follow you?
Yes,
Thank you.
ma'am.
Thank you.
We had a 51% failure rate in Algebra 1 coming out of 21-22. So our lovely humans here, Ms. Shimakowski, Mr. Camber, and I, before school started, we came up with a real fly by the seat of our pants. We were going to cohort 26 of our students from San Jose who represented the highest degrees of risk, which is that they got a D or an F in math in 8th grade. So we cohorted them. We had tried actually to have Ms. Shimakowski over here, which come over here and be my partner. We tried to actually have Ms. Shimakowski teach them 2 periods of math, but we were in a math teacher crisis at that point. And so Ms. Shimakowski couldn't do that, so Mr. Camber picked up and he took the advisory class. And what we found in that, and actually I'm going to pass it over to Ms. Shimakowski to talk about some of the things that we found.
So I've been teaching algebra to struggling students for the vast majority of my career at Novato High. And what we have found, what I have found, and what we have found through this iteration as well, is it's not, as she said, it's not just the academic skills, it's executive functioning, there's some trauma sometimes, there's lots of reasons why kids are not successful. And so what we've found is that yes, it is giving them curriculum that's more accessible. Yes, it is giving opportunities to build the skills that they don't walk in with, but it's also really important that there is a connection with a human. The human connection is the number one thing. And so when we built the advisory model, I knew that the connection was an important thing, and then self-regulation and executive functioning has been really difficult across the board out of COVID, but these particular kids. And then Danny was the advisor that year, and he took it upon himself to really include self-regulation and academic supports for sure, and SEL, and then we really did, you kind of did some case management, really found for each individual kid a great path for them to be connected on our campus. And so that was really the first year, and she's gonna talk about what happened with those kids. But the second year, we didn't focus on that advisory to be much more than an academic support, and it wasn't as successful because making the connections wasn't a priority. Like we just didn't. Danny naturally did it, and anyway. So we really do believe very strongly for all kids, for one that they can do it with the right supports, but also particularly for kids who struggle, it is the personal connection that's a critical component. And with that,
From that first year cohort, so 26 kids, 5 of them we put into AVID, or 5 of them applied for AVID. 6 went into medical careers pathway, 6 went into MSA, and then 5 from that cohort ended up in alternative education. But all of them are still within our scope. And one of the things we found from this is that getting kids from these small cohorts into a specialized program where they can follow their identity, purpose, and passion, to steal something from Michelle Cortez, has been highly successful, getting them a sense of community, getting them a sense of self. In the second year, as Ms. Shumakowski said, we actually doubled the number. We had 66 kids as a part of this cohort. Oh, and sorry, I got to tell you this, if it's still up there. Our kids in that first cohort had significantly better grades, significantly better outcomes in algebra by a whole GPA point from 8th grade to 9th grade, which generally speaking from 8th grade to 9th grade goes down. Our kids went up.
And the kids are juniors now, and they are, a lot of them are thriving. Right.
So second year, we tried it again. We did it with 66 kids. And the same thing we found, our kids in math were significantly better off. They did significantly better across the board in all classes, but in math in particular. And as Ms. Shanthal figured out, the kids who we had, the 66 kids who came to us, who we pre-identified as kids who might struggle in math, actually had higher scores than the kids on our MDTP data than the kids who had not been pre-identified. So the kids did phenomenally well in that cohort as well. So now we are in our third year. In our third year, we actually pre-identified 114 students based off of CASP scores, GPA, and other identifying factors, risk factors of kids who might struggle in algebra. All of those 114 kids are either a part of AVID, MSA, MCP, or they're in an advisory. Because again, we've learned over the course of these 3 years that having kids connected to something larger than themselves is highly impactful. And I'm gonna actually turn it over to Ms. Shanthal.
Perfect. So I'm the Algebra 1 guru. I'm the Algebra 1 person. So I'm going to talk about just some of the changes I've made in my classroom and some of the different discussions we've had as a department. So one of the things we've really done as a staff is meeting the students where they are and building on their strengths while challenging them to push and grow. That's something that's been our instructional focus across all different disciplines, but especially in math. In terms of my classroom, I've done a lot of you saw in that picture that I do a lot of one-to-one small group instruction to help build that confidence amongst our kids so that they feel the self-efficacy necessary to engage in really challenging tasks. One of the things I've also done is really tried to push for raising expectations. All of the research shows that when you raise your expectations, especially for kids that have traditionally struggled, they generally rise to the occasion, and that's something I've really been observing in my classroom. And we've, as a department, have been using a lot of formative assessments, so like IXL and MDTP, to sort of guide our instruction, identify areas of growth, identify areas of strength, and then target the areas where our students need a little bit more support and instruction. A lot of the things we've been doing, as well as a lot of collaborative learning. So you saw my students are in groups. We also have this new peer tutor program. So I have upperclassmen come into my classes and support our kids in small little learning communities as well. That's been super beneficial for some of my students that don't feel as necessarily I'm not like the cool kids anymore. I'm not super relatable anymore. I'm getting a little older. So it's been really fun having those upperclassmen in my classes to interact and support our students. And then one of the things I've done from an instructional standpoint is really alter the course progression to identify the areas where students struggle most. So MDTP showed that our students struggled most with exponents. So I was like, okay, well, what I'm going to do is expand that over the semester, spiral that through while giving more time to the most essential pieces. So students get that repetition that they need to really understand exponents before they can move on to geometry. Apart from all of the cool data and all the statistics and stuff, I just want to say as a teacher, it's been so long since I've been this excited about a project and feel so optimistic and hopeful, especially after COVID. I have kids that come in and they struggle and they push through and they're engaged and they're doing the tasks. And just from a teacher standpoint, I come in every day. And the best part of my day is working with those kids that will push through and persevere and struggle. And I don't feel like that's represented in the data necessarily, but just from an anecdotal standpoint, our kids are starting to like math. Dare I say. Yes. So would you like to? Or Shumakowski? I can continue. Why not? So the work ahead of us, we're going to continue to analyze and evaluate. So Danny and I are like the data people. Well, we love looking at data. We're little data nerds. And we're trying to identify like what are the strategies and formative assessments that are effective and are working, and how can we use those assessments to identify students as early as possible that may need this extra support, because the sooner we can get that intervention, the sooner we can have this program effective for the kids that need it the most, the better. And then also, how can I as a teacher and as a department, we reflect on our pedagogy and our instructional choices to identify what reaches the most amount of students and supports for our kids.
Let me jump on that. So we are changing the model of department chairs, as you all know, to be more instructional leaders. And so, it used to be that you sit in a department meeting, it'd be like 45 minutes of nuts and bolts. And we have agreed in our 15 minutes of nuts and bolts, 30 minutes of instructional practice reflection, or a little like maybe she or someone else would do a little mini, this is what I did about this. And so we're really going to be spending the year reflecting on best practices, and I think it's going to make a big difference across the board. But we're really excited about it.
We didn't really plan the outfits, but you just can't help but love these colors. I just want to wrap it up by saying this department and this approach and this understanding of the worth of students with amazing instruction, putting that together, you have magic. And that is truly what I think has happened in this math department. Thank you, Tina, for your leadership there. And really individual teachers stepping in and saying, I'm going to get my feet very, very dirty as I figure this out. And I'm just going to claw into it. And Tess is dazzling in the classroom. And it's true. These kids are like, I think I need help, but maybe I can figure it out. And that is beautiful. I know you all love to have children present. And when we went to ask kids if they wanted to come talk about their amazing algebra experience, they weren't lining up out the door. So I am so sorry that the children were not here to tell you how amazing they are. But if we have to back up really quick, just, we do. Oh, look, there are kids. There they are. We do have children, and they are thriving. And just so excited to see what this year's data does, and then the next year's data, and the next year's data. So thank you so much, math department, and to everyone who's here, and Allie for leading this work for the past 3 years. And Danny. So any questions or anything you'd like?
So everybody's suffered from the COVID vacation we all got. And it seems like you're in the process of trying to figure out how to get back to where you were, or you're trying to go in a different direction than before, or I think I'm getting the answer already. Yeah, more. I'll take that answer. It's good.
And I think too, what we're learning is COVID, they immediately threw money at us like, oh my God, this was such a mess here, fix it. And now we're sitting at the place where like, oh, it'd be really nice to have some of that money now, because we understand it better. And we're seeing like these kids coming through were in COVID in the 5th and 6th grade. And it's a very different way of understanding students than it was immediately after. So I think that's where we're sitting as far as the, I would also say too, the one beautiful thing about COVID is we kept saying, God, do we ever want to go back? I can't wait till we get back to normal. And I think the beauty of the people that I'm working with at Novato is there isn't necessarily that interest. It's the interest of what can we do better moving forward.
Really good. Thank you very much. I think the 2 words you said was personal connection, and how important that is. So I was sitting here going, well, how that needs to be, that's part like a goal for this district, is forming personal connections with your students. How do we get that message of the success that you're having? How do we get that across the district? But even as Tina, as you brought up department chair meetings, I guess, and doing some work there, I think that's a huge start. And how other departments understand the success you're having with the personal connection.
Part of the leadership of our school.
Yeah.
Focused on connection between our students,
right.
and it
I think it's important for the middle schools, even those departments, to understand the success you're seeing. Yeah, your message needs to carry on to them. Thank you very much.
I think it's amazing to start a presentation with really hard to look at statistics and to end being like, this is exciting, you know? And I mean, it really is. And when we toured Novato, you know, we came into your classroom, and I think, like, you're talking here about changing the order of your curriculum, and it's about how you lead meetings, and it's about master scheduling, because you have an advisory and you have a class, and that requires a commitment from the district to make that a priority in what's happening. And the way that you've set up your classroom, I mean, you can't really see it here, but you know, you move around to small groups, and so I imagine when you're not in one group, they are helping each other. And I think that that's a really neat way to rethink how we do things in our classroom, and just really commendable. This is really exciting, and you've already seen so much success. It's, you know, math can be exciting. So congratulations, thank you.
Math.
It can be.
Especially data.
I'll just really quick. I'm a big believer that nobody sucks at math. Everybody can do math. They just do it differently. And it's our job to find how they do it, and you're doing it. I love it. So the personal connection, I agree. Absolutely. Thank you. Well done.
Okay, thank you so much, you guys. Really appreciate it. Would our lovely teachers come up for a photo, please?
Come on, rest of our team.
Please,
Yes, whole team.
please.
Everybody, come on, here. Just like right here.
I know, so cute.
We have a little blue gray here.
Oh, yeah. Okay. Oh, this is great. Thank you. Let's see. Thank you very much.
Okay, we come to the part of the meeting called non-agenda public comment. Our first commenter is Russell Krug, and then we're gonna have David Perry, and I just want to remind you have 3 minutes for public comment. You can speak at the center microphone, and unfortunately, the board is not at liberty to comment on non-agendized items.
Hello again. My name is Russell Krug. I'm a 40-year resident of Novato, and I'm a board member of the Novato Tennis Club, which has been in place for 61 years now. And throughout my 40 years, all the school district tennis courts were available to the public until the COVID holiday 4 years ago. And we're wondering when they can be reopened to the public. We're very thankful that Novato Tennis Club regained access to San Marin High School courts on our long-standing 2 hours on Saturday mornings. But meanwhile, students who learn tennis or are on school tennis teams need public court access to play other than school functions. And the city of Novato is very deficient in tennis courts. We're way below the number of public courts that a city our size has. And if the courts at the schools were to reopen, as they've been for the last 40 years, except for the last 4, that discrepancy would be eliminated. Novato Tennis Club is all volunteer, nonprofit, community-based, and tennis, of course, is a very healthy social exercise, and anybody who's watched the U.S. Open recently has seen that it's advertised as the world's healthiest sport. There's been some studies on backing that up. So we're very much looking forward to working with JC and his folks on removing any barriers that may exist to reopen those courts. As far as we can tell, other facilities that were shut down during the COVID holiday have been reopened, but not the tennis courts. And so we're looking forward to working with you, JC, to make that happen. That's it.
Thank you. David Perry, please come up, and then our last speaker will be Kathy Van Noland.
Hello, thank you. My name is David Perry. Thank you for letting me speak today. My family and I live on Plum Street, right behind Olive Elementary. Literally, I can hop my back fence and be on the school grounds. We have a 4.5-year-old daughter, B, and another daughter who is 2.5. And we moved here about 2 years ago. And the reason that we chose Novato is so that we could provide the best educational start for our kids. And our hope was to live within walking distance to school, where both of our daughters could build community throughout all their elementary years, and that the school would just be another part of their neighborhood. Anyway, we enrolled B into TK at Olive Elementary in May, and admittedly this was a late registration, but at the time we did receive confirmation that she was enrolled at Olive. Throughout the summer, we even got emails from the Olive TK teacher to set up class playdates, a couple of which we attended. In fact, B had her evaluation with the Olive TK teacher on Tuesday, August 13th, just 1 week before school started, which was also when we received an email from the district that told us that B had been overflowed and would have to attend a different school. However, there was no additional explanation about why. We were obviously fairly shocked and confused, and we later learned that the TK limit had been changed to a 20-student maximum. We did ask for reconsideration, given the incredibly late notice, given our proximity to the school, and given that the state's TK limit was 24 until next fiscal year, not to mention that the 24 student limit was still on the Novato Unified website. The person who emailed us obviously didn't have the power to make those changes, and when we finally were able to meet with someone from Student Services, of course, he wasn't able to help us either. B is currently attending TK at Pleasant Valley, who have been very accommodating to us, and we were also able to reschedule our after-school care, which initially was not available. I think at this point we are past our disappointment and are just trying to move on. Our hope is that this type of mistake is not a common one within Novato Unified, but of course I don't think that we are going to feel settled until we're certain that B will be able to start kindergarten at Olive next year. Thank you for your time.
Thank you. And Kathy von Noland.
Thank you for being here and missing the debate. I'm sure we'll just put it at that. But so I'm here because I have a question about the grading system, and it's not the question you probably think I have. I don't care about the 1 through 4. It's about a few years ago, parents were told that the school would fix a glitch in the grading system at San Marin. And the glitch is if the kids take a class at the College of Marin, that class is treated like an AP class, so it gets a bonus point at every other school, like Redwood or other schools. But for some reason, it doesn't happen at San Marin. And the counselor was like, "Oh, we'll fix that." Now that was like 2 years ago, and it hasn't been fixed. So what we have now is an uneven grading system within the same county. And the reason why that's an issue is because it gives the Redwood kids an unfair advantage over the Novato kids. San Marin kids, this impacts their GPA and their college applications. And now this issue is particularly pressing because students are being directed to take College of Marin or community college classes because there's problems with the school. So for instance, there was a geography class that was impacted. My son couldn't get in. So they said, "Hey, you can take it up at the College of Marin." It was an AP geography class, and he did really well. He got an A, but it's only worth 4 points at San Marin, would be worth 5 points at Redwood, but only worth 4 points in San Marin because of the glitch. It's also a big issue because you guys are looking at early college. So this is going to be an issue that has to be fixed before you implement an early college program. It's also a problem because, as you all know, I don't know if all of you know, I don't know if this is happening in Novato, I don't know if it's just happening at San Marin, but we had a problem, and we consistently have a problem with our Spanish teachers. So it's not unusual to start the school year and not have a Spanish teacher and be told, hey, you could go take it at College Marin, or you could go take it at a junior college. So our kids are being directed to take more difficult AP level Spanish courses, but then aren't getting the credit. So there's almost 50 early college programs. I'm so excited that San Marin is embracing this opportunity, because it's a huge opportunity for these kids. But we just have to fix this glitch. And I'm hoping you guys could help me out with that. And because it's kind of on the agenda, I don't know if you guys can make a comment. Can you make a comment?
We can comment during the agendized item.
Okay, do I have to
Not
wait?
now.
Do I wait for that?
If you'd like to, you're welcome to.
Okay, I appreciate it.
Yeah.
Thank you for your time.
Thank you. Good timing. We now move on to item 12A, staff report, Novato Unified School District 24-25 goals, presented by Dr. Tracy Smith.
All right, so discussion about our district goals started in May and June of last year, and they really started when we were formulating our LCAP. But we'll start off just reviewing what our district mission and values are. So our mission is to engage, inspire, and empower all students in a rapidly changing world to realize their life goals. We believe that strong teams produce positive outcomes for students and families, and that community voice matters. Our values are innovation, equity, caring, inclusion, and collaboration. And we think about our Novato High presentation, we think about the 3 words for this year, which are exactly what they talked about: relationships, belonging, growth. Okay, so our goals should be all about the LCAP, but we have additional business that we have to focus on, of course, as a district. So I'm going to remind us of what our goals are in the local control accountability plan that we approved in June. Promote equitable academic achievement for all students by reducing disparities among student groups. Ensure all students feel safe, supported, and included within their school community through targeted initiatives and support, thereby enabling equitable access to curriculum. Prioritize inclusivity, celebrate diversity, and ensure equitable opportunities for all students to thrive academically and socially through collaborative efforts with students and families and community partners. When they talked about how, as staff, as Novato staff, they're aligned, right? They all have the same vision. This is coming from the vision provided by the board around the LCAP and the community in terms of gathering input to create these goals. Additional goals include identifying student growth and specialized program support through the analysis of data. You also heard about that this evening. Providing professional development for staff to support improved student outcomes. The additional piece under student, staff, and success is something that the board has provided tremendous support around, which is pursuing housing for employees. And then when we go on to fiscal responsibility, that's the part that doesn't really go in the LCAP in terms of our goals, but our goals should always be to be as fiscally responsible as possible. So we have these components to continue the Budget Advisory Committee, to ensure fiscal solvency and secure our multi-year projections, that we use updated enrollment, staffing projections, and data to help guide our decisions, attract and retain students at all levels, improved efficiency through more streamlined and unified systems of operations. And then final goal, the third goal is facilities enhancements and maintenance. So we plan to bring a final project list in priority order to identify what we want to, how you all want to spend the remaining Measure G bond funds, including those that have been reimbursed from other projects. We will continue to use the classroom utilization plan and update annually, and we will create and update the deferred maintenance plan annually. And then the final one, because it is the crux of everything we do, is communications. And that's expanding, continuing to expand to all of our educational partners or stakeholders. We will enhance communications by highlighting district programs and achievements, and we will build relationships with our community educational partners in Novato and throughout the county, I would say. And those are our goals.
Comments, questions? Okay, thank you.
Thank you.
Our next item is 12B. This is the school safety plan. This will be presented by Mike Saisi, our Director of Student Services.
All right, good evening, trustees and Dr. Smith. Thank you for having me. I come to you tonight to present some safety updates that we've been working on over the past few months. In June and August, our district leadership team got together to talk about some of the safety concerns that came up last year. And at these meetings, administrators were broken up into different groups to work on these topics. One of the groups worked on cell phones and personal devices. The goal of this group was to have a consistent policy at each level, so elementary, middle, and high school. In your packet, I put in a sample of an elementary one, a middle, and a high school policy. And you can see elementary and middle school is pretty much the same, where the devices need to be off and put away in their backpacks. And high school, they are, when they're entering into a classroom, they're put into a caddy while class is going on, and then when they leave the classroom, they grab their cell phone. This policy has been communicated to the students, and it has been communicated to the parents as well from the start of school. And then the final thing with cell phones and personal devices is I'm going to be forming a cell phone committee towards the end of September with students, parents, district staff, and site administrators to talk about policy that we can bring forward to the board, because currently we don't have a board policy on cell phones. And I did a little poll with the elementary, middle, and high school folks, just like, how are things going so far in the first few weeks of school? Everything has been positive so far. We did have some questions just around the watches that some of the students wear. So those are some of the kinks that we have to work out with this one. Another group worked on hate speech. So last year, a group of parents, students, site administrators, some teachers, and district administrators, we met over at the Hill Education Center to talk about some of the hate speech concerns that were coming up at the different school sites. As a result of that meeting, members of our DLT put together a new hate speech policy for each level, again, elementary, middle, and high school. They are, again, relatively the same, but different progressive discipline or restorative work that each level would do. A big component of this is around the education around hate speech. And there's a lot of kids, when they say something, they're not even realizing what they're saying. Just like the cell phone policy, communication has gone home to the parents. And communication around progressive discipline and restorative work has also gone home as well and gone over with the parents. And I also asked about feedback around this one as well, and everybody that replied back to me said the feedback has been positive and parents are very supportive that something is in place, because before this we didn't have protocols across the district on how to handle this. Another group worked on the discipline matrix. So we have a board-approved discipline matrix. It's roughly about 60 pages. We have a code of conduct. We have a flow chart. All of that board-approved back in 2022. What you have in your packet is a one-pager that looks like this. This is a tool that I will be bringing to the principals and assistant principals to get their feedback on. Once I have received their feedback, we will begin to try and pilot it this year and see how it goes and see if we can adopt this as something that administrators can use. This is, the reason behind this is to have consistency and equitable outcomes for students. So for example, if I'm an administrator and there is an ed code violation, I would go to this one pager and I would see where I would start on the discipline matrix. So for example, I'm just gonna pick one. So brandishing a knife, for example, that is a mandatory expulsion. So if you look at brandishing a knife, which is one of the 5 yellow ones that are mandatory expulsions, I wouldn't do any of those that are X'd out. I would go straight to the 5-day suspension and mandatory expulsion. And something that is not a mandatory expulsion, so for example, possession of drug paraphernalia, for example, that you would start at restorative work with that student so that they're understanding why are they bringing any kind of drug paraphernalia to school, and getting them any kind of help that they need. I want to make clear that this is not replacing the discipline matrix or the code of conduct. Those documents formed the foundation of this one-sheet discipline matrix. Other forms of established progressive discipline for non-ed code violations, like the cell phones, the hate speech, the academic honesty, those are all in separate documents, as you've seen some of those. As we look to establish common practices throughout the district, these draft documents will be considered for edits and revisions as we move along. All right, dress code. This is can be a hot topic at times. Per board policy, the dress code needs to be reviewed every 2 years. The last time it was reviewed, there was a committee back in 2022, and that committee made a recommendation to the board, and it was approved. So we are a little bit overdue on reviewing the dress code. So I will be forming another committee, just like the cell phone committee, with students, parents, site staff, and district staff to review that policy, and then make a recommendation to the board. Oops. Whoa. All right, I think we're back on track. All right, social media. So our goal for this year is to start doing digital citizenship lessons at each level, elementary, middle, and high. The hope is that students can learn how to be safe online, how to have respectful digital interactions with others, how to manage personal information and media consumption. Just like all the other items, there's going to be communication home to parents about this. We are going to be holding some workshops. So last year we had 3 workshops. We had 1 workshop that we did 3 times. It was called Vigilant Parent Initiative. And we partnered with Novato Police Department. They came in the evenings. We had parents at Hill Education Center. They were each given a Chromebook, and the Novato Police Department got them onto Snapchat, Instagram, Discord, Roblox, all the apps that kids are using, and showed them how to navigate and do the parental controls on those. So we're going to be doing 3 more of those this year, 1 this semester and 2 next semester. And then the group also worked on these digital well-being guidelines that's in your packet. This is also a draft, so we still need to get feedback on this. But the hope is that we will get this finalized and be able to distribute this to parents as a guideline for electronic devices and any kind of social media. And then e-bikes. So we have, over the past year and a couple of months, been partnering with Novato Police Department, and we've always been, Safe Routes to School, we've always been partnering with. But we have been talking with them around the education piece around e-bikes, because a lot of parents and students don't know that which bikes are legal, which bikes are illegal, and obviously we want kids to be safe. We are currently doing registration of e-bikes at the two middle schools, so San Jose and Sinaloa. Sinaloa piloted it last year and was highly successful. This year we have San Jose and Sinaloa doing it. San Jose, I checked in with them. They have about 5 to 10 students that are riding e-bikes or e-scooters, and Sinaloa has about 25 to 30. And in your packet is a sample of the Google form that they fill out in order to register their e-bike or e-scooter. And I think, as you can see, we've been busy with all of this work. None of it is ever really completed because we're always looking to improve on it, and some of this is in draft form, so there's definitely more to come. And that's it, unless if there's questions.
Thank you for this. It's really helpful to have it like compiled in one place, because I know we've talked certainly in the past couple months, but over the past couple years that I've been on the board around different safety issues, and there's different matrices and things, so having it here is really helpful. What was my question? I think it'll be interesting for us to use the Youth Truth survey data at the end of the year. You know, school safety shows up for us as a concern every year. And it will be interesting to see through that, and then also the committees that you're forming, if we're seeing that students and families feel safer at our schools, and if there are maybe fewer questions around how we're responding, because it's all very clear here. I also wanted to just highlight, I appreciate that there is restorative justice worked into this matrix, and I want to highlight, because people out there are not looking at the matrix as we are, that there's restorative justice, but then there's also other discipline kind of worked in there. I think I'm a huge advocate of restorative justice, but it works in partnership with other consequences and other pieces. Could you talk a little bit about the restorative justice work that the district I know is kind of looking at for this year?
Yeah, are you talking about trainings or what we're doing?
Well, I would say that I know that we're partnering with some organizations that do this work, and that also I think are teachers trained, are administrators trained, you know, who on our end is trained, and how are we working around that?
In restorative practices?
Yeah.
Yeah, so last year we had trainings with restorative practices with a group called Restorative Resources up in Santa Rosa. They came down and did trainings. And then this year we received a grant through Community Matters. And we have 3 different restorative practice trainings coming up, one in September, one October, one in November. The September one is an overview of restorative practices, so anybody that's brand new to doing restorative practices. And then the one in October is around restorative practice skills and running circles, restorative circles. And then the one in November is more formal restorative conferencing. The one in September is just a 3-hour overview training, so there's a lot of folks that can get involved with that. And the ones in October, the folks that are going to those are 2 full-day trainings for each one, October and November.
Thank you. You know, with the math presentation, we were focusing on that personal connection and how important that is. And I think that is where restorative justice is so valuable, is that you get to see the impact. It like humanizes the infraction. And so if it's done really well. So I'm glad that we're partnering with experts to hopefully bring that practice into what we do. Yeah. Thank you so much.
Thank you for all the work, and as Trustee Pickett said about pulling it all together, I think one of the big things for me, having been through the district and the different grade levels, is that stuff isn't consistent, and this creates consistency and uniformity in what we're doing, and with the message that it's coming from the district too. So it's not each site, you know, I would hear one thing at my daughter's elementary that they did stuff this way, and then this other. You know, we can tweak things a little bit, but generally the principles and concepts are same. You know, especially when it comes to the hate speech and that hate speech policy, which, as I had sent to both of you, I'd like to include the R word as an addition besides the N word. I think that's important. One thing, as you were explaining it, I thought that I understood as I was looking at it. If I can just have you go to the chart with you were explaining this one.
Yes.
Could you? So it was funny because I'm like, oh, this is cool. I get it. And then I thought, oh no, I don't. So is the idea that just even the first one, the physical injury. So detention is off the table. But you
Yeah,
do
ideally for that one, they would be doing restorative work with
Okay.
the student. And from there, I mean, ideally, the idea behind restorative practices is that they are learning from their experience and not doing it again. So making sure that that's not happening. Detention, I mean, I'm just talking about personal experience.
Okay.
When I was an AP, detention rarely works. Like, there were the same kids in detention every day. Not to say that it's not a useful tool at times, but ideally, restorative practices is highly successful.
Okay, I think that was sort of why I was like, all of a sudden, I'm like, oh, which one is like, to me, like that's the first place that you would start, and so it threw me off that the thinking it was from the least,
Yeah.
the basic fundamental thing, and then moving more progressively. So anyway, I just, when you were saying, I'm like, oh yeah, that's right. The X's are where you don't start. You
Right.
start where the white ones
Exactly.
are. I had it. Okay.
And this is just like the first draft. So I will be bringing this to administrators, and we may be changing things up.
Oh, that's okay. I was just trying to
Yeah.
understand the concept. I thought, okay, like how we're reading this and how
Yes.
we're following it. And so theoretically, if you make a terrorist threat, that just happens to be one that is here with the three. So you start with, what's OSS actually?
Oh, out of school suspension.
Oh, out of school.
And the ISS is in school suspension.
Okay, got it. Okay, thank you. No, I'm glad. I appreciate it. Thank you.
I think how do we keep the board informed as we move forward would be my main thing. So maybe another report back to the board at some point on how these committees are all doing. I know you'll have some policies come forward at some point, the revisions and new cell phone being a new cell phone one. I think I would like to know, I think the board, just how everything is going, just all that stuff.
Okay.
So keeping us informed as much as possible. Thank you. And thank you for clarifying some of the discipline matrix. That was my question early on, so I'm happy you worked it into your presentation. Thank you for doing that. Because it was a lot of work that was done.
Ideally, there would be one of the, it's a lot of paperwork, so I
Yeah.
mean, this is not necessarily something where an administrator would have a binder full of these.
Yeah.
But that is a possibility after we go over it with them. But ideally, you would have one of these for each student that had a ed code violation. So for example, let's go back to the one you were talking about, the very first one. If I had an infraction for that very first one, and I did restorative practices with that student, and then for some reason it happened again, I would be able to pull this out and say, oh, for this particular student, I've already done restorative practices. I'm now gonna go to the next one. And that way, every kid is getting the same progressive discipline along the way.
I think it's also that our sites are consistent with everything across every site. So if I go to one school or go to the next, they know what to do.
Right.
Everybody knows what to do. I think sometimes we fall, and it's going to happen because new staff comes in and all of that.
Right.
So I think it's just a constant conversation, bringing it up. How's it going? How can we help you? All that stuff. Thank you very much.
Trustee Miller?
So this is a little bit off topic, but this is a school safety report that you provided. We just recently saw in Georgia some severe behaviors on a student part, and we hear mom was traveling 200 miles, was trying to get to the school in order to provide warning. This is all low-level remedial work, all of which I really support. This is great work. Have you done some work around the area of severe student behaviors, or is that not something we want to? I don't know when that conversation occurs, or if it occurs at this table, or if it's just something that happens under the direction of the superintendent.
Okay.
I mean, these are troubled kids
So
and troubled
over the
families.
last year, like a year ago, the county, Marin County Office of Education had put together a threat assessment protocol for exactly these situations whenever there has been a threat of harm to others. So it's different than a threat to harm to self. And so we have all been trained in that. We are training new administrators in that. I would say we've probably used it 2 or 3 times already this school year in various situations. Nothing as extreme as what happened in Georgia, but something that has all these, once again, progressive steps. If this, then this, then this, then this, with communication with all the parties involved along the way. And we have found that protocol is highly effective in treating in any threat. And the steps get more depending on how how much law enforcement is involved in all those pieces. But they're pretty involved pretty quickly usually.
Basically, for timely response, you've already gone through the training with your principals and site leadership and the district office, and we've practiced, or at least desktop rehearsed some of these tools so we can use them efficiently when the time comes, if it comes to Novato.
Yeah. There's threat protocols, and then there's also on the ground, safety drill training. For intruder alerts. And so I invited Bill here tonight just in case the question came up, because he provides our drills so that we have consistency at all of our school sites in terms of responsiveness. So it's kind of there's 2 pieces to that, right? So.
Okay. Thank you for the response. Thanks.
So thank you. And I think for me, there's just a little piece that I understand we do the practice drills and all of that. I think the piece that I'm curious about and was a little bit eye-opening to me is that do we do like a surprise audit on like, okay, we just got a call from a mom says her kid's here, something that's outside of those regular emergency scenarios that we go through to say, okay, what would you do? Who do you call? At that level versus just that full school emergency, practicing for when the student is actually on or somebody is on campus. Am I being clear in that distinction? Like the difference between what you do at the school, if you're shelter in place or whatever, versus the protocols before. I know that there's the assessment and those practices, but we've got some new staff at the school site and they hear that a mom's calling in, that we've tested, that they know, okay, you call whomever, that those messages are getting through to whomever.
I just want to make sure I'm understanding. Are you talking about when somebody, like a parent at
She's
home?
asking if, aside from the pre-planned drills that we do, is there any kind of cross-check, spot check on the spot that we do? Which might put our staff in some kind of emotional peril, but.
No, I wouldn't say, I would just say, walk in, go, okay, if a parent called you right now, what do you do? Just like an audit, not like the full thing. We can take this off in another time, but to me, there's just 2 pieces. There's an assessment of whether it's a thing, but there's the thing, how does it get to the point where somebody's assessing it?
Yeah, and I think that's all part of our threat assessment.
Okay.
But I'm gonna let Bill intervene.
So we don't practice that as a drill, but we do have those situations come up quite often, and we have that interaction with the school resource officer, the police department, and the school site. So numerous times there'll be a email threat or some type of threat coming into the school, and the administrator will either call me or North Bay, or they'll call the police department, or they'll call the district office. And so we get these live actual things happening, and we have to decide, is it a credible threat? And the threat assessment that you have in place has different levels of threat assessment. And how do you respond to that? Is it just call the kid in? Is it calling law enforcement? Do you secure the campus in place? Do you lock down? And a lot of the threats that we're dealing with, live threats, are an email threat or a posting on social media that somebody's going to come to school tomorrow. So we make sure we respond correctly and not over-respond, putting kids on lockdown for 3 hours. So we have that live action going on during the school year where all the administrators meet and they'll talk about it and kind of debrief what's going on. So the 3 drills we're doing are the secure the campus, a secure transition to a lockdown, and then bringing the kids inside because there's a threat that may come onto campus. But we do continually work with the administrators on active threats that are coming in some type of social media or somebody making a statement. And that is shared with all the administrators. But the threat assessment matrix that they set up last year is tremendous to decipher the kids that are acting out. How do you respond? And there's several tiers how you're going to respond to that. Okay.
Maybe a good time, if there is a community member who has a concern or sees something on social media, what should they do to get that information in your hands?
So if they deem it's a 911 call 911. If they have a concern that, this is a third grader making this, they probably don't have the means to do this, then they report it to the administrator. The administrator reaches out to North Bay or to Tracy's office or to the police department. So for the people that are listening, if you feel it's a credible threat, you need to call 911 and let them decide, and they will contact us. But the partnership we have with the police department and the school district in North Bay is a very unique situation. And Novato's fortunate that all the three major players in safety are on the same page and have that communication. So.
Would you like to talk about Stop It app since we're kind of on topic?
Yeah, go for it. Thank you.
So the Stop It app is an anonymous reporting app that kids can use on their phones to report really anything. The majority of it is used for bullying that might be going on to either themselves or their friends, or I know when I was an AP over at Sinaloa, there were kids take advantage of it and use it. And the Stop It app reports go via text message and email to the administrators, and then I'm at the district office, I get all of them. So if there's one that comes in and I need to talk to the administrator and say, hey, just making sure that you saw this, it seems like it's a pretty big deal, I can contact them in case they haven't seen it yet.
And am I correct that parents can use that app as well?
Yeah. Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Are they, is there like some kind of icon on their Chromebooks too? Is that still happening?
There is. The last I had heard, and I'm not sure about this year, but I know previously they were able to use it on their Chromebooks.
Yeah, I just thought
but
maybe
I don't know
people-
if that's still accurate.
Okay.
Yeah.
I just thought people might want to be aware that it's kind of easy, at least it's accessible there. And one other thing, just going back to the whole cell phone thing, I when I went to back to school night at Novato High, it was funny. All the teachers were like, we need your kids to be charging their Chromebooks, because now they have to use their Chromebooks instead of their phones. So kind of a nice little transition that, okay, we have like a couple of chargers. We can't be charging everybody up. You need to start having your kids bring them fully charged.
Yeah.
Okay, thank you so much. We are now on to item 12C, student enrollment and staffing update for 24-25 school year, brought to us by Francesca Whitcomb, Executive Director of Human Resources.
Hi, good evening, Superintendent Smith, trustees. The item here is just an update or a report on where things are at with our enrollment and staffing. The figures and everything in here, just to keep in mind, are as of the last school day in August. And so this does give you a comparison from 22-23 until our current August of this school year. As you can see, between 22-23 and 24-25, we have had an increase. Just between 23-24, actually, and this year, it's an increase of 89 students overall. And so that is a good thing. And we know that, I think when this report was brought to you last was actually a couple years ago by the interim HR person at the time. And it was brought, I think, in October, I want to say, of that particular school year. So it's a little different because actually the numbers will probably fluctuate up from this over the next few months. And then you can see in terms of our vacancies that still remain, I would say that actually even after going to press, we did have a counselor position at Novato High, a person that resigned late, and we had one of our newly hired PE teachers also resigned in like the first week of school. Those positions are actually being actively recruited for, and we actually have a potential person to hire for the counseling position. So crossing fingers that happens tomorrow. I don't want to like give bad luck or anything, but it should be fine. And then we are actively recruiting for it's a yoga dance position. And we do have a candidate for that. And so we're going to be finishing the screening process on that and hopefully get that set up for interviews. And then as you can see, and it's also reflected on the consent item, the personnel action report, you probably noticed a number of 1.2 assignments. That is basically how we have had to make the decision to fill some of these vacant positions in English and biology in particular. And those are done with the consent of the teacher. In case anybody's wondering, there's actually documentation they have to sign off on that to take that assignment. And then our resource specialist position, we actually are still looking at some potential candidates for that. We would much rather have an ongoing NUSD staff person rather than using an agency hire. And we actually might have some potential staffing transferring or rearranging based on what Dawn is kind of learning as she gets more and more familiar with her staff at the different sites. We could have some means to fill some of those vacancies. The psychologist and the speech positions, speech is just historically, I've been in HR for 20 plus years. It's been a struggle to find speech pathologists forever. So anybody out there, be a speech pathologist watching online. It's great. Come work in schools. But yes, we have used agency hires, unfortunately, for quite a while to fill those vacancies. And we are taking steps and making strides, and improving salaries, doing things that we can to stem that tide and have people that we can hire. But it's just a struggle, an ongoing struggle. And that is basically a summary. And I just want to say that later in the school year, as we get closer to spring, I'll be bringing a staff report that's more of a enrollment projection report, projecting into the 25-26 school year, which is really strange to even say that, and looking at our staffing needs that we're thinking about for the coming school year. All right.
Thank you.
Short
questions? Trustee Gaston and then Trustee Miller.
Thank you for the update. I have to say, I think we're doing a lot better. Our special ed department, I remember when we were just struggling to fill a lot of vacancies. So I think we've progressed a lot. So thank you. I know it's a lot of work for your team and all the stuff that you did to bring people on board. We have another student coming in, as you saw when I was reaching out to you. So we have another student already potentially coming to the district, was out in the lobby tonight looking to how they can enroll. So this already, like you said, it's a moving target. Having said that, I thought it was great timing that There's Leslie sent out a article that was talking about SB 98 with Senator Portantino. I don't know if the rest of the board got a chance to read that yet. But the reason that we're always focused on the number of students in part is because of the funding that comes along with it. So it'll be interesting. That bill, I guess, is going to take a look at changing it so that ADA maybe not be the element or the factor in terms of our funding. So that would be helpful as well, depending on how that all plays out. Just really good timing because every student matters for a lot of reasons, but part of it's for funding. So thank you.
Indeed.
I see we went up 89 students over the last year, and we dropped about 15 in the year before. What do you think, what's your forecast for the next 4 years? Do you see it flat? Do you see it increasing? Do you have any sense of what's going forward?
I mean, I think that it's going up. I think with the changes to TK in particular, I see
Okay.
Parents bringing their children and enrolling their children in TK, for one thing. And there is growth happening slowly in Novato. And I just see, I think there's a little bit of the COVID babies, as I would call them, like that are starting to come into our schools as well. So yeah, I see it increasing.
Okay, thank you very much.
Okay, thank you so much.
All right, thank you.
Now, for those of you who thought math was fun, here we go. We have item 13A. This is the approval, good question, actually, yes. Approval of the 23-24 unaudited actual financial report with Joshua Braff.
All right. Most exciting report that I get to present is the last one of the year, right? So this is the 23-24 unaudited actuals. So we'll start with sort of like the picture. And I did this on the, this was one of the first presentations that I got to give this board last year. And it started with this same picture. And that one went in a very different direction. What was interesting about this year, and Jeff and I were sort of reminiscing about, it's weird to reminisce about numbers, but that's what we do. We reminisce about how much this changed and then turned out to be not that different than where we started. So if you look, it started with a negative 2.3, so a deficit of 2.3 million, and it became a deficit of 4.6 million. And while, yes, that's a $2.3 million difference, basically double the deficit, it's off of a $120 million budget. So that's really not a huge number. But the part that did change a lot is the total revenue went up by $8 million and the total expenditures went up by 14 and then came back down 4. So while the beginning and the end weren't so far away, there was peaks and valleys all throughout the year as we continued to turn over every stone and find out what was underneath there and get our budget aligned with what we were actually doing. It was just surprising to find out that we were unknowingly not too far off from where we started. So breaking it down to look at what those differences in revenues really were, in LCFF revenues, we hit the total unrestricted revenues was 91 million and then 30 million in restricted. And then the LCFF, which combines both, but it's our local control money, is $86 million. Some of the big changes that happened was the E-rate reimbursement. These were E-rates for the prior year. Those reimbursements came in this year, so that was unbudgeted. ESSER funds, those are, I think COVID funds. We used the last amounts of those, and they were unearned revenues. So they didn't show up in the budget until we added them. Now they came with expenses, right? So it's basically a $0 game in that one. And then there was also some Title II money, a significant amount of Title II money that was carryover from prior years. State revenues, they increased by 3.2 million. This was the big chunk of money that increased. In other words, it wasn't budgeted. It wasn't necessarily increased. It just wasn't budgeted. And that was because there was a lot of new programs that had come out in the 22-23 school year that didn't get implemented until the 23-24 school year. One of them was home to school transportation. That was an increase to our budget of 1.2 million. The community schools grants that we were awarded of 200,000. Prop 28, we had heard about it at this point for 3 years, and the money finally came in. And it was about just under $1 million for us. There was also increases to ELOP and to like lottery funds, and that's because our ADA went up from what we had projected. So from what we budgeted to what we actually got, our ADA had gone up. And then our local revenues, they increased by 2.4 million. The biggest portion of that was interest. With interest rates going up, the money that we're holding in the bank, that also went up. And that went up by, as you can see, a lot of money. And a big portion of that is also our local grants and donations. And per practice, you don't really budget your local grants and donations because there's no way to know if you're going to have a really wonderful person in the community come in and say, here's a check for $500,000, and then never do that again, right? So you can't really budget for those types of things. So really, what have we learned? This is not necessarily a what have we learned as much as it's here's some of the key points or our key takeaways. And the big one is that, so our ADA, we were able to use a funded ADA. For a long time, it's been you either use the current year, the greater of the current year or last year. And then it was added that you could use or the average of the last 3 years. That was to hopefully eliminate a fiscal cliff. That was the big worry with California schools is this fiscal cliff is coming, ADA has dropped, and everyone was held harmless with COVID, so they're coasting up here, and then now they're going to go boom, and they're going to lose a ton of money. So they implemented this average of the last 3 years. 23-24 is the last year that we will be utilizing, if trends stay the same, the last year that we will be utilizing any semblance of a previous year. This year that we're in right now, we're already looking at utilizing the current year, which means we've weathered the fiscal cliff. That's the good news there. So where we were at 69.71, which was our actual ADA, we were able to be funded at 70.31. Now we're hoping that it will go up from 70.31, but the point is that the average of the last 3 years is actually lower. Last year is actually lower than what we're seeing for this year. Prop 28, ELOP, and home to school transportation, we now know what it is, so it's in the budget. So we're able to accurately budget that for going into this year. And we also know that there's no surprises for the 24-25 school year. There's no new one-time funds, and we've also already settled our negotiations for 24-25. So both of the two potential unknowns of one-time funds and our own internal decisions, we don't have to worry about for 24-25. So then we move into expenditures. And so some of the biggest changes or the biggest points to call out, certificated salaries was $51.7 million, and that equaled 40% of the unrestricted revenues and 42% of all revenues. So that's unrestricted and restricted together. Classified was $20 million at 13.5% for unrestricted and 16.5% for all revenues. And then employee benefits was $28.6 million. And so altogether, employee salaries and benefits totaled 82.47% of all of our revenues. We are clearly a people business. That's where 82.47% of all of our funding goes. Contributions to restricted programs, so that's primarily special education, but it can also be food service did not need it, but it could also be things like food service. There was an increase of $2.5 million to a total of $17 million. That left us with a surplus in our unrestricted ending fund balance of $1.5 million and a deficit in our restricted ending fund balance of $6.1 million, which gets you to that total of a total deficit of $4.6 million, as we talked about on the first slide. So that's the makeup from the unrestricted to the restricted side. So a big part of this is position control. We focused a lot on our position control this year, making sure that we didn't have unnecessary positions that were never going to get filled, and we knew they weren't going to get filled. We also made sure that a position was in the correct budget, was put onto the correct budgetary salary schedule, right? So that the idea is that if you were to hire this person, what do you believe they would actually be paid? Make sure we budget for that number and not for just some random number. You see that more on the benefits side. You see it project for full benefits for a position that's, say, 0.25 FTE, where benefits aren't even eligible. And then school site and department participation in the budget. We've made sure through the budget advisory committee, through our meetings with principals, through going to our PTA, PTO, PTSA groups, talking with union partners, everyone and anyone that wanted to listen to me talk about the budget, we talked about the budget last year, and we made sure that it was as collaborative and transparent as possible so that we could eliminate any of the stigmas, any of the misassumptions that were going on about how funding in schools work. Because we will always have swings and changes. That's the nature of this business, but that doesn't mean that they have to be scary or unaccounted for or unknown. You can see the flow if you're tracking it with us through the whole thing. Because to the business office, we see it, right? So we hear about it, we know it's coming, okay, we put it in our multi-year projection, then it hits. And so we've seen the trend. Everyone else doesn't. They just see the beginning report at the budget, and then they see this end report and they go, why'd you get it so wrong? So we wanted to clear that up. Spent a lot of time clearing that up. And so this is the last slide is talking about the ending fund balance. And a big part of the ending fund balance, we kind of get into the world of accounting here, and you do a lot of movement. So you take expenses from unrestricted and you try to move them into any of the restricted programs to spend down that money when it's allowable, because restricted money is only allowable for specific programs. So when you have eligible expenses, and usually with restricted money, the money is going to end as well, right? There's an end date. You have to use it by, September 2024. Which is a lot of the federal grants are running out September 2024. So you want to move all of your eligible expenses and save your money that's allowed to be used on anything, which is your unrestricted money, right? Anything that's school. I always say you can't buy sports cars and mansions, but you can do everything you need to do to run a school. That you can purchase. Well, you want to save that money because it gives you the most wiggle room. So a lot of that happens at the end of the year. And the ending fund balance, you're going to see in here, the big change last year between the 2022, 2023 restricted and unrestricted, that combined difference was $18 million. So one of them had gone up and the other one had gone down by a combined $18 million. This year, it was $9 million. So we did 100% better. That's how I'm going to look. I'm going to choose to look at it that way. Even though I wasn't here for the budget development, I'm going to say somehow we did something to make it only 9 million instead of 18 million. We obviously have a lot of faith in our budget this year that it's going to be much more accurate than what we saw in the past, because we don't have to do all this uncovering rock work. And we also have, like I said, no surprises coming from the government in this budget. And with that, I'll take any questions and ask for approval of the 23-24 unaudited actuals.
Two comments. One is your goal of having the budget match actuals as closely as possible. I agree is exactly the right model. Our union partners, our business decisions, our investment decisions are all tied to how well or better the closer the budget is to what actually happens. So congratulations, that's wonderful. The second point I'd like to make on page 4, it's an aside. On page 4, you identified the E-rate program at $600,000, $660,000. Dana and her predecessor have worked hard to make sure that money was all spent and used for the proper accommodations, and I'm glad you've recognized that $500,000 in terms of us being able to upgrade our technology equipment in a timely way. And because if that money's not spent, it's lost. Mm-hmm. So thank you for not identifying it in the report. Thank you. That's all.
I just wanted to say, you showed us that slide that you were on before, looking at how aligned our budgets are. And I had a note here from last year at this time when you said we're going to come back to this in a year and hopefully we've done better. And I appreciate that you've actually come back to it a year later. And I think it's a really helpful visual for us to see our yearly progress toward that goal. So I just appreciate the consistency in your focus there.
Yep.
I want to say thank you to you and to our labor partners for coming to a contract that is more in the future, no, more current and in the future than behind, so that we can continue to make good financial choices. I know that this year when you guys start your negotiations, it will be for the next year so that we can budget appropriately, and I really appreciate that.
Absolutely.
Would anyone like to move to approve this item? Trustee Millerick, thank you. Second. Trustee Mack, thank you. All those in favor? 7, none opposed. Wonderful. Okay, we are on to item 13B, the approval of resolution 1-2024/2025. The appropriations of limit control calculation, that's the GAN limit.
Yeah, so this is known as the GAN limit. It is the first resolution of the year. And the GAN limit was started in the 1970s as a way to have this local control over increases to government spending. It doesn't really affect us because we're an LCFF district. So basically it's given a increase every single year. And then we're also given an increase every single year, but both of them are tied to student counts. So therefore, we go up by the appropriate amount that the GAN also goes up. And so our resolution tonight is not asking for an increase in the GAN. That's the two options. Just FYI, if we were, say, a basic aid district where this does come in, the idea is, hey, board, would you like to send all of our excess money back to the state government? No? Okay, then sign here. That's basically what that is. So we have the even easier route to you vote yes and nothing happens because it was $0 anyway.
Wah, wah, wah. Sorry, I'm so
I'll
sorry.
move approval.
Thank you, Ross. I apologize for my joviality. Ross Miller with a first. Thank you. Trustee Gasson would like to be the second.
It's a roll call vote,
And it's a roll
I think.
call
Yeah.
vote. Thank you, sir.
Yep.
Trustee Butler?
Aye.
Trustee Gasson?
Aye.
Trustee Jacobson? Aye. Trustee Lametta?
Aye.
Trustee Mack?
Aye.
Trustee Millerick?
Aye.
Trustee Pickus?
Aye.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Next, we have item 13C. This is the acceptance of the 24 through 27 middle college and early college grant. We have Dr. Julie Signard here to present.
Okay, thank you. Good evening, members of the board and Trustee Smith. I have a wonderful request for you to please accept the 2024-2027 Middle College and Early Grant Fund for $250,000 for a 3-year term. That is $250,000 in total. Unfortunately, we don't get $250,000 each year, which would be amazing. And basically, this money is going to go for us to work with an amazing team at College of Marin. And I want to thank Dr. Jonathan Eldridge, Mia Robert Shaw, Nigel Hawkins Appia, who is from Sierra College, who's helping us kind of with this process, and Dr. Dana Emerson, total dream team, and Julian Solis, too. And there's so many other folks that we're going to be working with to kind of create our vision for middle/early college. And so looking forward to bringing you a lot of information about this event and the planning process, and hopefully we can launch this in the fall of 25-26.
Trustee Lamanda?
I just had a really quick question. How do we envision this program to work with our partnership? I know CDE recommended that we work with the early and middle college to provide technical assistance to grantees. So just kind of wondering how we're going to roll this out, and if I don't know if we're going to partner with them. So, but it sounds like you already have partnerships.
We do, and fortunately, this gentleman, Nigel, used to work for College of Marin, and now he works for Sierra College. He has been instrumental in bringing middle college to Placer County and into Rockland specifically. And kind of he's giving us, like, here's what you need to do. Here's step 1, here's step 2, here's step 3. And then the other amazing thing is Dr. Emerson Her background was as a high school principal who built a number of middle colleges. So she has a vast experience in this as well. So really partnering with them and saying, okay, some questions that have come up this evening. What does college credit look like? What does dual enrollment mean? What is attendance for us? How do we make sure we're getting credit? And it is going to be a little bit tricky because obviously we want to, still honor our labor partners and make sure we're covering all our bases for our own, needs. How are we extending, after school opportunities? How do we bridge areas of focus, knowing specifically to one of the big areas that we're targeting is our long-term ELs. What kind of additional support can we have for our long-term ELs? What kind of age degree? There's so much exciting stuff to come through. They're really going to help us kind of figure out what our framework, and Nigel is going to be instrumental in this. And College of Marin has partnered with him specifically to help us build out our scope and sequence.
So then what happens when the grant is over? How do we sustain this program?
Great question. I like to write grants. So figuring out if really realistically, I think what some of our biggest challenges are going to be transportation. Yeah, absolutely. So how do we figure out, do we work with our own transportation department? Do we call Marin Transit? I'm sorry, I'm forgetting what the folks I get to meet here soon. Just really saying, here's what we plan on doing. Here's how we hope we can do this. Can we work on bus schedules? Because this is just College of Marin, the Indian Valley campus, is right here in our backyard. I mean, this is such an exciting opportunity that we just need to figure out how to engage with that. And like I said, if we create an amazing program, we'll find the funding to sustain it. I'm not worried about that, honestly, and that will be part of the granting.
One last question. How many students do you think will participate?
It's a great question. And this is kind of what I'm trying to figure out in my brain too, right? How to manage all of this. So we have our folks who are working with our Marin County Office of Ed and which kids are signing up for some of the programs that we have right now. Looking at those students, again, trying to make sure we're maintaining the partnership with Marin County Office of Education as well. And so I'm hoping that our juniors and seniors really start tackling, again, Dr. Emerson, kind of in conversations with her, it was like in her previous district, she was like, every one of my students, like the whole goal was that every student takes at least one college class. So I was like, okay, just tell me more about that. So I obviously have a ton of work to do on this, but if we could truly say that every one of our students experiences taking at least one college class, I'd be thrilled, over the moon with that.
Sure. So I feel like there's this thing we're approving, but it's not really sure. And then I was looking at the steps. So the idea is that we approve this if it gets funded.
We receive the funding. So
I thought I saw something that said it may be that the state
every grant that comes like along these that says if funding's cut, that's going to happen. That's kind of a caveat in any of these. So we have been awarded the $250,000 unless something drastically happens and our legislature takes money back. So that's
okay. Well,
we're
I'm
okay
familiar with them taking money back, so I just presume. Okay, so it's more set than I was thinking. Okay, because then the timeline, because then you mentioned programs for 2027, but so. We approve this, then you have to have the plans in like June of 2025, and then the thing goes to 27.
So basically the whole plan is it's basically how are we going to start recruiting? How would we start advertising to our students? How would we start working with our partners? That's kind of what the whole plan is. I don't have to submit some major plan in terms of kind of approval. So this is going to be us, kind of the plan will come to you and say, hey guys, here's what we're doing. Here's the expectations. Here's who we're going to start recruiting. I would like to have all of that done hopefully by January, February, because if I need to start recruiting for the fall of 25, that's kind of the timeline.
I was getting stuck on at what point do you know if you have, okay. Again, I'm thinking that because our financial situation at the state level has been so bad and there was uncertainty about certain buckets of money, I thought, okay, I'm just not going to count on it. And now I understand a little bit better, so thank you. Okay.
Pardon me. So the first thing I'd like to say to Dr. Sinyard and Superintendent Smith is the leadership that you guys have shown to go out and find a grant that puts us in the CTE business and in the partnership business with the community college is amazing. This is the leadership that I imagined a year ago was possible, and here we have on the table an actual planning grant to allow us to go, and it's NUSC's leadership that's moving us forward. And and we have a great partner in making that happen. I'm thrilled. And the idea that Dr. Emerson has said, which is every high school student should have the experience of taking a college course so that they understand that their horizon isn't just being a senior in high school, but their horizon is beyond that. What a wonderful partnership. So I'm just over the moon that this works. I am concerned that the students who we start with is the proper mix. Are these kids who are newcomers who need encouragement because their family has never seen a college course, or are these students who are on a transfer program anyhow, and this is helpful, but it's something they might have done already. So I am interested in to see how you, as this matures, how you identify what populations you lead with, because I think the newcomers are. I would like to see families be able to, in a single generation, go from new to the United States to have a college focus and leverage the intellectual capacity that they brought to have a successful life in Marin County or in California. So I think thank you very much. I think that's what I just said. This is wonderful. And after only 1 year you guys are covering lots of ground and expanding the capacity for the kids that live in Novato for what's possible. Thank you.
Okay, we have a public commenter. It's Kathy again. I don't know if you want to restate your question or if you'd like her to address it.
Yeah, it'd be great.
Okay.
But first I want to make just a statement saying that it's phenomenal that you've brought this to Marin County. I mean, there are 50 of these schools in California. They tried to instill this 20 years ago.
Yep.
I am so happy. This is such a huge gift, especially to underprivileged kids. It's like giving them $80,000 because it could save them 2 years of tuition, room and board. So I applaud you. On another note, going back to my question, with this glitch, we addressed it at the school level with the counselors 2 years ago. We're going to fix the glitch. The glitch hasn't been fixed. It's going to affect you because it seems like everyone's got a different way to treat college coursework. So I'm wondering how we make that happen. It would be great if you talked to the people at Solano. I actually reached out to the early college in Solano through an email last week to go, how do you treat it? They treat it like AP classes. So if a kid takes a community college course, they treat it like an AP class. They get that extra bonus point. So I hope that you reach out to Solano because they've been doing it for 10 years very successfully. You should see where these kids are going. You should see how much money these kids are saving. It is a phenomenal program, and I hope everyone in this room looks it up and does some research on middle college and early college. So that's all I have to say. Thank you. Oh, and then the question of, like, how do we find out how college classes are going to be treated? Do we?
She's going to answer. Okay, I am allowed to answer. Okay, fantastic. Thank you. Great questions, all great questions. And one of the things too, and we'll be discussing this further. One of the things that we've been talking about is our counselors, and we've gone through some professional development called Hatching Results. And so I was trying to remember when you were making your first comment, back in November, we started having all of these conversations, and we want to make sure that we are on par. We never ever want our kiddos to be behind in any way, shape, or form. So what is, the Tamalpais Union District doing? What's the San Rafael City Schools District doing? And so we kind of reached out and said, hey guys, we're grappling with some of these challenges. And from our understanding, so maybe 2 years ago, additional weighting was being given. It's my understanding now that it wasn't. And so maybe that's why there might be a glitch. I will definitely do more research in this. Because
I have 2 emails, one from Solano County, who does early college. They give the extra point. I reach out to
Okay, I'm sorry. It's not a back and forth conversation. She's answering your question now, and she's expressing all of the information she has and will be getting. So if you could just let her do that. No, I'm not at all in a hurry. It's just that it's not, I don't have any tone. It's just protocol. I'm sorry that you feel that way. That's incorrect.
So kind of in our conversations, kind of calling and kind of reaching out to the TAM district and to San Rafael, they had not given this additional bump in the last year or so. So that was one of the conversations. That being said, we are also bringing forth board policies and the grades and student evaluation that is coming in the next couple months or so. We've known that this is an area that we've been looking at. And in terms of kind of what we did update in the previous year, in December of 2023, we brought forth, because we were looking at kind of the college credit that was awarded. And so we had previously different kind of point GPAs. It was like I can get a 3.3 or a 3.7, and then we rounded that out into a number. So that's the work that we have done thus far. So from my understanding, just kind of within the schools within Marin County, that we're not giving the additional grade bump for a college course, because what we were talking about too is that the UCs and CSUs recalculate the kiddos' GPAs. So once they're applying, that's when the additional grade bump was given through them. That being said, having larger conversations to make sure we are giving our kids the biggest benefit, no problem, and more than happy to do that moving forward.
Great, thank you. Yes.
You might have already just touched on this, but I'm just going to recollect my experience as a parent. My understanding is that the UCs, the CSUs, and the Ivies look at unweighted, period. They do not look at weighted GPAs for acceptance.
I don't want to speak, because again, college counseling is not my area of expertise. So I was just going to say, if they're recalculating, if they are saying, because
They are recalculating. They're looking at the transcripts.
Correct.
I remember specifically getting from Brown back the real grade point, not the 4-point XXX.
Correct.
That was
Yes.
that we sent.
Yes.
And that's the same thing with the UCs. So.
I don't know how to weigh in here, but I do know I work in the TAM district, and so I know that in our district, what happens, it does not, if a student takes a class at a college in Marin, on their transcript, it does not impact, they don't get an increased bump on their transcript, but when the student applies to college, they send their TAM transcript and they send their College of Marin transcript, and the recalculation happens at the college level. So
Absolutely, and it happens at the UCs in the States, but it doesn't happen at the private schools.
I'm really sorry, but I need you to stop interrupting in the meeting. It is not a back and forth. I appreciate your statements.
I understand, but when there's misinformation being spewed, it has to be corrected.
I think you might be inaccurate. You're hearing from experts right now. And if you'd like to book an appointment with someone on our staff to talk about this further, we would love to have you come do that.
That'd be great, but we need to know who that expert is.
You can have an appointment with Dr. Sinyard. Great, you're welcome. Other comments? Thank you, Trustee Butler. Do we have a second?
Second.
Thank you, Trustee Millerick. All in favor? 7, none opposed. Thank you. Okay, our next item is 13D. This is the approval of new job description, department chair, grade level leads. This is a first reading.
Good evening again. So what you have before you here for your discussion and action, and if so moved, we'll move it forward to the next meeting on consent, is a new job description for our certificated bargaining unit for department chair or grade level lead. And as you can see in the background, this came about through our negotiations process last year with NFT. It was very important to them as well as to us to develop, a more straightforward, clear, concise breaking down of the duties and the responsibilities, the expectations for people in this role. And it was kind of alluded to earlier in the presentation from Novato High, actually, in talking about the work that their department lead and their departments are having. And so there is it was really a need communicated clearly from NFT that their members really wanted to have more clarity on what their expectations were moving forward. So this is a first reading. It was collaborated on and shared with NFT leadership, who gave it their quote unquote seal of approval if you will. And I am happy to answer any questions you might have.
Seeing none, do we have a motion to approve this to come back on consent? Thank you, Trustee Gasson. And seconded by Trustee Pickus. All in favor? 7, none opposed. Thank you.
And I neglected to call out Dr. Sinyard, who worked like a little banshee to help us put this together too, by the way. Thank you.
A banshee.
Yeah.
Okay, we have item 13E, review and approve board policy and AR update in the 4,000, excuse me. This is a first reading.
All right, so what you have here are board policy and administrative regulation for employee safety, as well as administrative regulations regarding to work-related injuries. None of these policies or administrative regulations have been in our district manual previously. I am happy to be bringing forward them to you for your review. The kind of the impetus, if you will, for making sure we brought these forward was the newly enacted legislation about that started July 1, requiring us to establish, implement, and maintain at all times and in all work areas a workplace violence prevention plan with specific components. It is part of our injury and illness prevention plan, lovingly called the IIPP. We love our acronyms in education. And both of these items, just for reference, are posted and available on our district website via the Human Resources Department section of the website. We did, thank you, Leslie, you're amazing. Leslie and I worked together with Tony Albini before he departed to create this kind of almost like a presentation, if you will. I won't call it a video. I narrated a PowerPoint, kind of explaining what the workplace violence prevention plan is, and how people can access the information. And then at the end of last year, we formalized our IIPP document. So that was not that long ago. It was May of May of 24, right? Last year. And so for this coming school year, Leslie has worked with scheduling our workplace violence prevention plan, IIPP. It's like an overarching safety committee. And we have 4 meetings on the calendar scheduled. That is like components of both of these things, right? And it's all part of these new policies. Those meetings are scheduled quarterly. They're on the calendar for September, December, February, and May. So we are moving in the right direction.
No discussion? Okay. Jasmine?
No, I'm just laughing because you have me flashback. I wrote one of the first IIPP policies at a law firm I was at in 1990, probably 5 or 96. I was just having a flashback. But I move, if nobody has any questions, do we do them all at once?
Yes, we'll do them all at once and they'll come back on consent.
Okay, I make a motion.
Okay, we have first by Trustee Gasson, a second by Trustee Mack. All in favor? 7 unopposed. Thank you.
Thank you so much.
And we now are on to item 13F, the approval of NUSD Education Workforce Housing Development Staging Plan with Derek Nell.
Okay, good evening. It's been a full night, and appropriately, workforce housing is last on the agenda as our main focus is education, and it's been a pleasure to participate and listen to you guys do what I used to do as a trustee. So good job tonight. I really do respect the work that you're doing, and it's impressive what the district has been up to these days. So we're going to start with our education, workforce, housing staff report. And I want to introduce James Traber from F3 Law. He's our attorney who represents us on the process, and a member of our executive team that facilitates the process for our workforce housing. So just want to start out by saying education and workforce housing attracts and retains top teaching and support staff. It improves education and the consistency and the quality of education, I should say. It supports employee well-being, reduces turnover, and addresses staffing shortages, builds a sense of community, stability, and continuity in our schools, cuts commute times, strengthening connections between staff and the community they serve, and it encourages diversity by attracting individuals who may not have otherwise decided to work here in Novato. So that's what education workforce housing is about. This is where we're at now. We follow the California School Board Association's education workforce advanced training protocols, and it's essentially divided into 6 stages, and we have completed our preliminary exploration, and last meeting we accepted the final feasibility report. So it's time for us to go into the next stage of development, which is by far the most complicated of the stages. And for that reason, we're going to set it up with what I'm referring to as a staging plan. So our objectives tonight are to have you accept the staff recommendations to begin a staging plan for the next stage of development, which was the prior slide that we're going into. What we're going to be recommending is that you authorize us to engage with neighboring and associated organizations to establish information process to explore the potential involvement with our workforce housing projects. We're going to ask for the formation of an education workforce housing development projects team and its subcommittees. The purpose of these teams is going to be first to pursue entitlement options and explore alternative funding sources, both of which are functions that take longer or have a timetable. So we want to get started on those 2 things as soon as possible. We're also going to be asking that we establish a 7-Eleven committee, which is a state requirement to formally identify surplus properties before we can begin an application process with the state for waivers to use the properties as either for sale or for long-term lease. And the 4th item is basically just to show you the schedule we're proposing and get your approval on that. It's the first one, authorized engagement. This is essentially just to authorize us to meet with neighboring organizations and associated organizations to establish an information sharing process to explore involvement in our housing development, including capital contributions, planning, or relocation. And essentially, these are just examples of the types of agreements that we'll be looking to formulate. It's more or less there's many different ways to approach this, but we'll essentially start with a letter of intent, assuming and depending on the types of responses we get, we may enter into a higher level memos of understanding, which help to establish what each party's responsible for, sets up a timeline. Initially, we're probably talking about non-binding MOUs, but it is possible that MOUs can be binding agreements, but that'll likely depend on the entities that we're working with. And finally, when it comes to actual real estate transactions, the city, for example, agencies like the city like to enter into what are called exclusive negotiating agreements. But these are all items that we will bring back to the board as we progress through the different stages, basically sequencing as we get closer to full binding agreements. The next thing we're going to be looking for permission on is the development of our project teams, and we've divided the into 3 subcommittees, starting with the Finance Committee. The Finance Committee is going to be primarily made up of the executive team members. We will add, as needed, advice from affordable housing financial consultants, and we will also take advantage of our JPA agreement with Government Financial Strategies and ask Lori Ranieri to participate on this team. Lori Ranieri, of course, is the person that's helped us with the refinance of our general bond obligations and helped us run our Blue Ribbon Committee for our parcel tax last time committee. So she's also had experience with education workforce house funding in the past. We'll go ahead and continue with our communications committee. This committee pretty much is already in place and has been active in our ongoing community outreach, helping to structure the advisory committee, those meetings, and our public relations campaign outside of the districts. Third subcommittee is the Development and Construction Committee. Again, most made up of our executive team members. In this particular case, we'll be looking to add a land use entitlement consultant. This expert service will help us with the bullet points you see underneath there, the types of information that we're going to need to formulate as we move forward with some entitlement thinking about how we would go about adding value to our lands through the entitlement process. We'll likely engage in some requests for qualifications, followed by requests for proposals to identify the best firm or individuals to help us with that. This slide also shows where the 7-Eleven Surplus Committee is going to be brought up on the next slide. It identifies our existing advisory committee, and it also introduces the use of our local experts that we'll be using to review the process as we move forward. The best way to make use of our local experts is to incorporate them as into membership with the 7-Eleven committee and to ask them to participate at the advisory committee level and have them do their review and input through those vehicles. Next, we will need to form a 7-Eleven committee. The feasibility study recommends using proceeds from the sale of the surplus property to help fund the education workforce housing projects. We wouldn't be able to sell surplus property or lease property without first identifying it as surplus property, and the state has a process for this. It has a strict a membership structure that we have to follow. We have to hold Brown Act compliant hearings, and what we'll have that committee do essentially is review the staff's analysis of the feasibility study and findings. They'll consider community input and make a determination on the disposition of the surplus properties. That'll come back to the board in the form of a recommendation for action to either identify or not identify these properties as surplus, which is required by the state through this process. And the staff will bring back a full report on the committee process and its recommended membership at a future board meeting. So another example of how we'll be back to get your input and approval as we move forward on these different steps. Just want to touch base to let you know that we are continuing ongoing community outreach plan. It's important that even though we're in the staging plan of the development process, that we have an ongoing communication plan, that we're reaching out and meeting with the stakeholders in the community. So we will continue with our presentations with community groups throughout the fall and the early spring. Essentially, that me and hopefully other members of the communication committee will put on a slideshow, answer questions, and make sure that our neighbors and other stakeholders understand where we are in the process and what we're doing. We'll continue to do housing page updates, And we started a regular distribution of our education workforce housing newsletter, recently distributed through Parent Square and to other individuals who have signed up to receive it. I hope you guys all received it. That's our communication plan. And finally, these are the dates that we've set up. We have the Community Advisory Committee meeting coming on September 23rd. At that meeting, Brookwood Partners and myself will review the feasibility study with the committee, along with the board direction that we get tonight. On October 22nd, we're hopeful that we'll be able to come back with the 7-11 committee formation with a resolution for you to pass to have us go ahead and put that committee into action. On December 3rd, we'll have a board meeting where we'll basically give you guys a staff report on where things are at. There's potential that we would have the 7-11 committee work done by that time, but we can't determine that exactly because a lot will depend on community input and those members and the decision process that they need and the information that they ask us to provide them. After that December 3rd meeting, we'll have another Community Advisory Committee meeting. Originally, we had that scheduled for the 22nd, I think, on the paperwork that was published, so essentially we needed to change that to the 27th, scheduled to be an update. And then it will be February 11th of 2025, where we'll be back to the board, hopefully at that point, with a pretty good idea of what we're gonna do along the lines of the development plan for housing. So deliberately went as quick as I can due to the lateness of the hour, but I'm happy to switch back and forth between the slides and answer any questions that you have. And Jim is also here if you have questions for legal.
We have one community comment. Would you like me to take that first? Sure. Great. Okay. Jeff, please join us for a comment.
Yeah, all of you, your endurance for sitting and focusing is incredible. So thank you for that. And thank you, Derek, for all the details that you provide, and your just attention to detail through this whole process has been really helpful. I know I've mentioned this before here, but this first came up as a thought idea in NESD over 10 years ago. So if you were a child in kindergarten, you're going to graduate and never have a teacher that lived in one of these homes. And I think that's disgusting. That's ridiculous. Like, we can move quicker than that. You have 21 staff members in unstable housing, according to the surveys that you put together. You have half of your teachers under 44 who said they're considering moving because of the housing costs. I don't think you want to deal. We just heard the math department talk about relationships and how they're formed. Those relationships get broken when teachers have to leave because they can't afford living here. And you are on the cusp of a solution to this. And I was reading an article recently that did say, yeah, you shouldn't be having to deal with all this kind of development property management. But you also didn't ask to deal with the teacher shortage nationally. You didn't ask to deal with the housing crisis. And these are the problems you've got. And you've got creative solutions that you're taking advantage of right here. And so I just want to say, don't let perfect be the enemy of what's good. I know you're moving ahead of schedule, and I hope you can continue to. Don't be perfect. Don't let perfect be the enemy of what's good. You've got an executive team. You've got a good staff. They're working their best. They're going to dot every I and cross every T. And you know what? At the end, there's going to be a mistake. But out of the thousands of children and families in Novato, most of them, if not all, are still going to benefit immensely from what you're putting together right now. My children being some of them, who I remember when we went through the Measure A process, and I went out and thank you, those of you who knocked on doors with us. My children came and knocked on doors, and we met a lot of people who really just want to help our teachers. So everyone wants to help. Nag Derek, nag me, Tracy, nag me too, and get the community involved. The 7-11 committee is going to be wonderful because people want to help. And I told my children that since they help knock on doors, if I had some time, which I do, I would tell all of you after you're done with this project, they really want to zip line at their next school. So.
Thank you. Questions, comments from the board? Trustee Butler?
Question, where does the feasibility study fit in all of this? So we've completed it, it's sitting on a shelf, no. What happens with all the work that was entailed in that? So if you just, I know we have all these committees now that were gonna be formed. Who is actually looking at those sites and?
So maybe the best place to start with with that would be to say the formation of the 7-Eleven committee. We need to declare the properties surplus. The feasibility study itself says that one of the best ways that we're going to come up with a portion of our funding is through the sale of surplus property. So that's where I would suggest how the feasibility plan feeds into first the formation of the 7-Eleven committee. In addition to that, on the development and construction subcommittee, we talked about in the case of sale of property, selling as is would be a lower price option, but if we were to make the effort to entitle the properties, to increase their value, to help come up with pro forma models for use of the property, and then to work with a builder and the city to come up with an entitlement that gives the right for that type of project to be built there, would add to the value of the property, and that's kind of where the feasibility study fits in. It's important to keep in mind that the feasibility study, the goal and the objective there is just basically to give us a conceptual idea of what's possible and to tell us what's not possible. And in most of the cases, we have the option of declaring our property surplus and entitling them to raise revenue, then to take those revenues to another site and develop education, workforce housing there, I guess is the best way to explain it. So am I getting there? Okay.
Thank you.
So I am concerned about the 7-Eleven committee and the process. My memory is before I was on the board, Hill was declared surplus and the city picked up the playfields, and which is now the Margaret Todd Center and the bocce ball courts, and they ended up with the property, and we didn't, because they have a preference to access it, we didn't get the price that we needed then. My understanding also, when we considered closing, during my time, when we considered closing campuses, the closed campuses would be offered to, and charter schools could choose to pick them up they had rights ahead of a developer who could pick them up. So I'm based on that partial history that I have, I'm concerned that 7-Eleven process doesn't end up being a real bottleneck for us being able to get the economic value out of these properties, to be able to have them transfer to a commercial developer and get value for what's going on. So I would like some more background around that. Maybe there's,
Sure.
Just because my personal history and memory is that that's an obstacle. I would like to know how we're going to resolve it.
Jim, you want to, going to have James Traver
got
come up.
room to contact with this even better.
I included in the board report, there was a 7-Eleven worksheet, and there's two paths. One of the paths that you mentioned earlier, which involved the city. There's another path where we would apply for a waiver with the State Board of Education.
Hi, good evening. So,
Evening, sir.
a couple of thoughts to share with you about your concern. The 7-Eleven piece is slightly different from the statutory offers, which is what it sounds like happened to you with respect to the playing fields at Hill. The 7-Eleven committee is simply going to form and study the properties and come up with a report that says, we think this one's surplus and this one may not be surplus. And they're going to make a recommendation to you guys. It's not going to be a binding recommendation. It's just going to be something that they've suggested. When it actually comes time to start the process of maybe selling these properties, we are going to apply, most likely, to the state for a waiver of some of these statutory procedures that would otherwise apply. There was a statutory procedure in years past that required us to make surplus properties available to charter schools. That expired some time ago, so we don't need to worry about that one. There is, however, a number of other statutory priorities where we make these offers to other cities, counties. There's a laundry list of other public entities. What happened to you with respect to Hill is most likely you got a Naylor Act offer from the city. Yeah, so the Naylor.
Yeah, but I wasn't here then, but that sounds familiar.
So we would make every effort to waive that provision, although I'm not really sure it would apply to some of the properties that we have here. Naylor Act basically says if you have a property that was used for recreation within the last 8 years, you've got to make it available to cities, counties, rec and park districts and things of that nature. Probably wouldn't apply here. We'll probably seek a waiver of it from the state anyway. All of that to say that part is maybe a couple of steps further down the road, and where we are right now with the 7-Eleven is really more of a study and community feedback process. So,
But, former trustee Harris may have the actual history that I don't have. So, okay, I'm done, thanks.
Sorry, I just have a follow-up to that. So thinking through that process though, so if whatever the recommendation is by the 7-Eleven, they decide one of the properties is surplus, do we have to vote that it is surplus and then we'd have to do that in the waiver? So there's no guarantee that the waivers would go through though, but that would be a question at that point that we would have to determine, correct?
yes, that's correct. So, actually, do we have that chart that they may have it?
They have it.
Yeah, that's okay. I can look at it more, but he just raised a point, which is why we like having him here for 33 years, has it been? That I just started thinking through my head, like, what are the checkpoints so we can get there when we get there?
So to answer your question, when we go through, after the 7-Eleven committee gives you a report with recommendations, we're going to come back with a resolution asking you all to make a determination that the property is what they call exempt surplus, and that's relatively new. In 2021, we started having to do that. That gets you around certain state clearinghouse procedures where you would have to offer this for affordable housing development. We don't have to because we're a school district, and we go through 7-Eleven. So we're going to have that resolution, and yeah, probably at or near that time, we're going to ask for a waiver. It may not be exactly at that time. We've got to do a little bit of forward planning on that because your waivers typically only last for a year. So we may not really be ready quite then at that point for that. But what the 7-Eleven committee will allow you to do is kind of get that box checked so you can go to the next step and keep pushing forward.
This question is sort of for you, Derek, and it's a little tangential potentially, but in this next step, we're looking at partnerships. And certainly as we look at funding options, there'll be a lot of conversations around what those partnerships could look like. I'm interested in exploring partnership. I guess it doesn't necessarily bring more money in, but I'm looking at childcare costs. Certainly the cost of housing is exponential for families, but also childcare in this county is exponential. And we had a speaker here from Community Action Marin yesterday or 7 months ago, I don't remember, who was talking about how we have a shortage of facilities that are available for childcare workers. And I'm just interested in exploring what that kind of partnership might look like, whoever that is. I don't know if that's an interest that other board members have, but I would just like to see what a partnership could look like. Maybe it is offering subsidized childcare to some degree for some of our employees. Maybe we have housing options, but we also have potentially a space where we could provide subsidized childcare as well, which would help a whole nother portion of our staff significantly. I don't know if other places have something like that, but I'd be interested in having that come into the conversation as something that we could explore.
Yes. There's a lot to that, but essentially we are, I brought up this slide basically because we are asking that you give us permission to explore with different partners possible capital contributions that may involve them in the actual planning process. In the case of childcare, it's synchronistic, if that's a word, but currently the state of California is amending the 2016 Affordable Teacher Housing Act to allow employees of nonprofit childcare workers to qualify with the same status to supersede others who might qualify for below market rate housing. So in other words, it would put those childcare workers in the same class as our employees, which would allow us to offer them housing units without discrimination against those others out there who are looking for below market housing. So that's a big plus. It's on the, I understand it's on the governor's desk, and I'm hoping that he signs it. Should that be the case, I think we're going to find there's going to be a surge in child care providers looking to partner with school districts to in collaboration and to raising their own capital and assisting in the construction of workforce housing for child care workers. So again, sort of a way it's falling into place. So we know that Head Start is located on our Meadow Annex parcel. If we were to put a building there, for example, the ground floor could be a child care center, and that would simply wouldn't dislocate them, and that whatever they're in portables now, they would just operate out of a ground floor of a building that was constructed to accommodate our employees in there. We'd have to work out all the deals, and a lot would depend on the amount of capital they brought.
Other comments or questions? Okay, I have one. On the slides, you talk about MOUs. It off the bat says non-binding, and then later it talks about binding agreements. Which of those would you bring to us?
So these really literally are just put out to be examples. I Googled agreements, and I got 22 suggested answers. So it's quite extensive. Jim and I have kicked this around, and we felt like the best idea might just to give you guys a sense of what we're asking you to give us permission is first, let's write them a letter on your behalf, say we have intent to construct workforce housing, probably bring up the sale of surplus property, and depending on who it is we're sending that letter to. In the case of the city, they have a parcel that's adjacent to one of ours. In the case of the Meadow Annex, we have a tenant that's a child care provider. In the case out in Hamilton, we have the county library, for example. So these are the kind of entities that we're asking you to let us engage with them and to see how they'd like to participate and to be aware of what our intentions are. So starting out with letters, and that could lead to, when I say non-binding, it's better to start out maybe with a non-binding agreement. But at each step, this bullet point here is each type of agreement, utilizes for laying the groundwork for more formal, more binding agreements going forward. And at every step, you guys would be participating in the knowledge and approval of those agreements.
Great, thank you.
So I'm trying to get a sense of what approval you're asking for and what's the next checkpoint. So I'm looking at this diagram, your slide 2. And we're right between feasibility and development. Yeah, that slide. So feasibility, basically, at the last meeting, we said, if you looked at every possible development site, there's about 700 possible units to develop. We've been told by our advisors that we don't have the financial resources to build 700 houses. We're going to have to make this work, we have to develop some, entitle some, and then sell those off to a commercial developer, and the revenue from that added to the property we still have makes this thing work. That's the model I heard last time around.
That is the model.
So when we say that our next thing is to do development, we're not hiring contractors to design interiors for apartments. When you say development, are we going to put a detailed plan together for which pieces we entitle and which pieces we developer, what is the next, what's right under the D for development? What do we do there? What's the next thing we do that you want us to approve for going forward?
It's a large stage, 1 to 3 years. As I mentioned before, it's probably the most complicated, especially when it comes to negotiation. Essentially, from the feasibility report and other direction and previous conversations with the board. Number 2, formation of the development projects teams. The first things we're going to do are pursue entitlement options. So the feasibility report does not give us an analysis of what is the highest development that you could put on that site to yield the highest value. So that's primarily what we would like to get started going down that road, and we're going to need some expertise in that area for them to come back. The feasibility report was strictly limited to what can you do in the way of constructing workforce housing.
Yeah, it's little boxes, cutouts on a piece of paper. Right.
There may be other uses for these properties that would yield a higher residual land value, which is the term that they use.
So you're asking authorization to create the committees, and then the work that gets started is pursue entitlement options, basically do some detailed, after you've told all our partner or potential partners we're on this road, they're all going to get excited and run around and like or not like or who knows what. Right. But at that point, you're going to then begin the process of doing more specific pursue entitlement options. What you can do in each piece of property? Is that what really you're saying you want to do for the next 3 months?
Viable plans for how the land could be used in a way that would yield the highest value to the school district.
And that's the work that's going to be the next. If it's a 3-year window, that's probably the next year's worth of work. Is that a fair statement?
I want to be really careful about commitments, but on the schedule I gave you coming back February 25, I hope that we'll be in a position to have you guys to say we would like to make a recommendation at that point as to what properties to entitle and which ones to build on.
So to me, the choice really is to say yes to that, or to say yes to something more limited, or to say something more open-ended. And I guess I would suggest that 12 months before you come back to us is too long.
I think he said February.
Yeah, no, it's
okay. February's 3 months.
We're actually gonna come back in October with the 7-11 committee results. We'll be back in December. Okay. The community advisory teams are going to meet in here, but and I would expect to come back to add meetings or to come back to you guys. If things were to change along the way that required your knowledge and approval and direction.
So I think February sounds like that gets us through the holidays, and that makes some sense to me. So I'm here to approve this, but I won't be around for that exercise. But I think that puts us in the controlled go-forward model.
We might have some openings for you.
Well, yeah, I know, But while I'm doing this job, I want to make sure the controls are in place, that we have fiscal accountability, because in these projects, the horror stories are Dominican sells property being told it's good for 2 houses and it's got 40, and the community's furious because the public. I mean, the Dominican's a private institution, but that is a public agency. If one exists in San Rafael at all, is the nuns that ran that. And I suspect some of those nuns are not very happy with what's happened to the...
But am I correct to say that was not entitled?
Well, they're trying to get it entitled. It's not entitled yet.
They sold it without being entitled.
Yeah, they did, and that was I will remind you, my personal experience here is that's a mistake. So
my number one role here is the district is simply stated to make sure that the Novato Unified School District is the number one beneficiary of anything that we do along the lines of education, workforce housing. So
we need to all make that same promise. Everybody sitting at this table needs to be signed up to that same objective.
I think that is the case. Yeah. Yeah, we need a motion to approve this item.
And do we add appointment of Ross to it?
No, we don't.
I'm just kidding.
I see a first by trustee Mack to approve this item and a second by trustee Butler. All in favor? 7, none opposed. Thank you.
Thank you all very much.
I don't know when our next meeting is, I'm sorry. Okay, our next regular scheduled meeting is not the 6th. I'm sorry. I don't know when it is. It's the 24th. Just off memory.
September 24th.
We'll see y'all then.